Scene 1 unfolds with a deceptively simple premise, a makeup appointment between Anne, a controlled and exacting public figure, and Kristina, a traveling makeup artist whose labor sits at the intersection of artistry and service. Yet beneath this ordinary setup, the scene becomes an intimate study of emotional negotiation, power, vulnerability, and the quiet emergence of recognition between two women who initially occupy opposing positions. Anne is introduced as distant and difficult, her dissatisfaction manifesting in sharp critiques and an insistence on control. Kristina, by contrast, begins in a posture familiar to many women in service roles, patient, accommodating, and quietly resilient, even as her expertise is questioned. The tension between them is not simply about makeup preferences. It is about authority, visibility, and the subtle hierarchies that shape how women interact with one another, particularly in professional contexts where emotional labor is expected but rarely acknowledged. Anne's resistance to Kristina's process, her insistence on seeing the mirror prematurely, her distrust of the technique, reflects a deeper anxiety about surrendering control, about being seen in an unfinished state. This fear resonates strongly within queer readings of the scene, where the idea of being in process mirrors the experience of not yet fully understanding or articulating one's own desires or identity. Anne's discomfort is not merely aesthetic, it is existential, tied to a need to maintain a carefully constructed exterior that protects her from scrutiny. Kristina's role then becomes more than that of a makeup artist. She becomes a mediator between Anne's public self and her more uncertain interior world. As the dialogue unfolds, the friction between them highlights how women are often conditioned to manage each other's emotions while suppressing their own. Kristina's patience is not passive but strategic, a form of quiet endurance shaped by the knowledge that her livelihood depends on maintaining composure. Yet when she finally pushes back, suggesting that Anne might be difficult to please, the moment carries a subtle but important shift. It is a refusal to fully absorb the emotional burden being placed upon her, a boundary that complicates the dynamic between them. This exchange opens a space for mutual recognition, where both women begin to see each other not as roles, client and service provider, but as individuals with their own vulnerabilities and limitations. In many ways, this transition mirrors the early stages of queer recognition, where initial friction or misunderstanding gives way to a deeper awareness of shared humanity. The scene's pacing allows this shift to feel organic rather than forced, emphasizing the importance of time and patience in building trust. When Anne reluctantly allows Kristina to finish her work, the act becomes symbolic of a broader willingness to be seen, to relinquish control and trust another woman's perspective. This trust is fragile, built on a series of small concessions rather than grand gestures, which makes it all the more meaningful. The eventual reveal, Anne's satisfaction with the final result, serves as both a resolution of the immediate conflict and a metaphor for the rewards of vulnerability. Yet the scene does not end there. Instead, it deepens into a quieter, more emotionally charged territory. Anne's apology marks a significant turning point, not only because it acknowledges her earlier behavior, but because it signals a shift in how she perceives Kristina. The apology is tentative, framed within the language of stress and external pressures, which reflects how women are often taught to contextualize their actions in ways that maintain social harmony. Kristina's response, gracious and forgiving, continues this pattern of emotional labor, yet there is also a sense that she recognizes the sincerity behind Anne's words. The request for a hug introduces a new layer of intimacy, one that blurs the boundaries between professional and personal interaction. In many contexts, such a gesture might be dismissed as casual or platonic, but within the framework of this scene, it carries a deeper resonance. Physical closeness becomes a conduit for emotional connection, a way of communicating what cannot yet be articulated in words. The hug is not portrayed as dramatic or transformative. Instead, it is quiet, tentative, and deeply human. It reflects the ways in which queer women often navigate intimacy through socially acceptable gestures, using touch, admiration, and care as proxies for feelings that may not yet feel safe to name. When Anne follows the hug with a compliment, acknowledging Kristina's beauty, the moment becomes even more layered. Compliments between women are culturally normalized, yet they can also carry an undercurrent of longing or recognition that is difficult. In this context, a compliment feels both genuine and exploratory, as if Anne is testing the boundaries of what can be expressed. Kristina's reaction, though understated, suggests an awareness of this shift, a recognition that something has changed in the dynamic between them. The brief kiss that follows is framed not as a culmination of desire, but as an extension of gratitude, a gesture that exists in the ambiguous space between friendship and something more. This ambiguity is central to the scene's power, as it reflects the lived experiences of many queer women who navigate relationships that do not fit neatly into predefined categories. The kiss is not sensationalized or exaggerated, it is quiet, almost hesitant, emphasizing the emotional context rather than the act itself. This restraint challenges dominant narratives that often portray lesbian intimacy as either invisible or hypervisible. insisting instead on a middle ground where such moments are treated with nuance and respect. The scene's focus on emotional intimacy rather than physicality aligns with a broader effort to center women's interior lives, highlighting the complexity of their connections without reducing them to spectacle. In considering the cultural context, the film's emphasis on Latina characters adds another layer of significance. Representation of Latina women within LGBTQ+ narratives remains limited, often constrained by stereotypes that prioritize family, tradition, and heteronormativity. By placing Latina characters at the center of a story about emotional discovery and connection, the film challenges these limitations, offering a more expansive vision of what Latina identities can encompass. At the same time, it invites reflection on the specific pressures that Latina women may face in navigating their identities, including cultural expectations around femininity, respectability, and loyalty. The question of whether a more open society influences women to become lesbians is, in many ways, reframed by the scene itself. Rather than suggesting that external factors determine orientation, the narrative emphasizes the role of visibility and acceptance in allowing individuals to recognize and articulate feelings that may have always been present. In this sense, a more open society does not create desire but makes it possible to acknowledge and explore it without fear. The scene's subtlety underscores this idea, showing how moments of connection can emerge organically when space is created for honesty and vulnerability. Beyond its queer reading, the scene also resonates with broader themes that many women, regardless of orientation, may find familiar. The dynamics of control and surrender, the burden of emotional labor, and the fear of being seen in an unfinished or imperfect state are experiences that transcend specific identities. Anne's initial defensiveness and Kristina's quiet endurance reflect patterns that are deeply ingrained in how women are socialized to interact, often prioritizing harmony and care over self-expression. The gradual shift toward mutual recognition suggests the possibility of breaking these patterns, of creating relationships that are grounded in authenticity rather than obligation. The scene's strength lies in its refusal to rush this process, allowing the characters to arrive at a place of connection through a series of small, meaningful steps. In doing so, it offers a vision of intimacy that is both realistic and hopeful, one that acknowledges the challenges of vulnerability while also celebrating its rewards. The interaction between Anne and Kristina becomes a microcosm of larger conversations about visibility, emotional truth, and the quiet resilience of women-centered relationships. It challenges viewers to reconsider how they interpret moments of connection between women, encouraging a reading that values depth and complexity over simplicity. By treating the relationship with seriousness and care, the film resists the tendency to either dismiss or sensationalize women's love for one another, instead presenting it as a natural and meaningful part of human experience. Ultimately, Scene 1 sets the tone for a narrative that is less concerned with dramatic plot developments and more focused on the inner lives of its characters. It invites viewers to pay attention to the nuances of interaction, to the ways in which small gestures can carry profound significance. In doing so, it creates a space for recognition, where women, particularly queer women, can see aspects of their own experiences reflected on screen. This emphasis on recognition is perhaps the scene's most important contribution, as it affirms the validity of feelings that are often overlooked or misunderstood. By centering emotional intimacy and mutual recognition, the film offers a powerful reminder that connection does not need to be loud or overt to be meaningful. Instead, it can exist in the quiet spaces between words, in the tentative gestures that signal a willingness to be seen and to see another in return.